everybody. Welcome to another episode of Culture by Numbers, where data geeks meet pop culture. And we dive deep into ways that marketers, data scientists, and ad tech practitioners can collaborate with brands looking to utilize tools for performance. There's been a dizzying pace of acceleration of AI integration and features. Every day you hear something in the news. Since OpenAI burst into the scene in 2018, believe it or not, gosh, it's been 7 years, and have achieved mass scale in the late 2022. We've seen emerging products from established players like Gemini, formerly Bard at Google, and Llama from Meta, and spin-offs from OpenAI like Claude from Anthropic. And while the first generation of AI applications utilize chatbots to take advantage of natural language processing, ideally for customer service, there are now a host of expansions across media, including generative AI to build new images like DALL-E and Adobe Firefly, and even video like OpenAI's Sora and Amazon's Nova. So my phone is literally weighted down with a bunch of new apps containing single function AI applications that I've downloaded or plan to, like Notion, Voice Notes, Otter AI, Gamma, Granola, Cursor. The list goes on and on about ways to simplify, summarize, and categorize. So the next leap includes what's called agentic AI, which is the ability for machines to move up the ladder from artificial narrow intelligence, or ANI, to artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which is the ability for machines to independently self-govern and predict next steps. So I'm blown away by all these new features from deep research and challengers from Sweden and China like DeepSeek, Manus AI, and Lovable. It's really overwhelming, almost sci-fi movie scenarios. Today, we have a very special guest, Anne Olderog, who is a senior principal from Vivaldi Group, a global business reinvention firm with core expertise in new digital business models, new growth avenues, innovative experiences, and value creation models, including new technologies such as AI. Anne was a former M&A analyst at Goldman Sachs and is a 25-year veteran of strategic consulting, beginning at McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group. She's definitely not a slouch. She's multi-hyphenate. She holds an MBA and master's in international studies from Wharton and the University of Pennsylvania, as well as degrees from Cambridge University in London and the Sorbonne in Paris. Her client roster is a who's who of Fortune 500 brands, where she advises them on white space growth opportunities. So together, we hope to deconstruct and make sense of what AI development means to leaders and to rationalize what's real and what's hype. The biggest challenge is not invention, but the reality of applying AI for high octane growth. So welcome, Anne.
Hi, Sunny. Great to see you. Thank you for having me.
So let's just jump right in. I mean, I have a few questions I wanted to discuss. And the first one off the bat is there have been a ton of developments in AI models. And in the last 2 months alone, it's just been amazing. It's great to be able to have your point of view, to step back and really see the forest through the trees. What do you believe are some of the missed opportunities for brands?
So everybody's talking about AI. Everybody knows this. We at Vivaldi actually just published a report where we did a survey across over 150 senior executives, asking them how they use AI and how they do not use AI. And do you know, Sunny, what came out of it? Well, the majority felt that AI was likely to transform their industries and business completely. Only very few acted on that. And so the reality is they're using AI in a couple of really limited use cases, typically trying to obviously find savings and replace their labor force and create what we call productivity savings, which is truly the lower level of value creation in which you can possibly use AI, which is try to replicate what we do already. Much more interesting is the second level, which is this level of really improving transactions, which means improving current processes, not just replicating what we do, but actually doing things better. And then the very top, the summit of the pyramid of AI value creation, as we call it, is really reinventing how to do things. And I think that is the biggest opportunity I see with AI. The most forward-looking companies completely recreate the way they do things with AI and find new models, including obviously new revenue generation models. And this is where I see most opportunities that are being missed because people are dabbling and are trying to, as we say, throw spaghetti against the wall, just see what sticks. Let's try to develop this kind of POC or that kind of pilot without really thinking strategically about where AI can create most value. for their business. So if I have one advice for your listeners is to please step back and think strategically, where can AI add value? What are their biggest unsolved problems, either for your customers or consumers or for your business? And how can AI help solve problems that perhaps humans haven't solved so far versus simply using AI in a very limited way, such as really replacing labor force, obviously?
That's really great to have that tremendous insight from your survey of leaders, and hopefully we can publish sources of that pyramid so they can our listeners and viewers can resort to that as a reference as they think through these big challenges of business transformation, productivity, and new areas of revenue beyond a delegation of repetitive tasks. So, given that there is a long upstream upside of implementing, as you say, only a small percentage of leaders have actually implemented it. What are your future predictions of AI, and how can companies explore ways to make it real?
This is a really interesting question. Well, obviously, we've seen one of the fastest adoption curves at the beginning, faster than the iPhone. So AI has spread in its initial usage really quickly. But to me, the fascinating dilemma or paradox that I'm seeing is that AI is actually being used more by individuals, consumers, or even individual workers rather than by businesses. And obviously, there's a huge opportunity for AI to change the processes of the firm and for the firm to reinvent their functions with the help of AI. So we actually know that about 40% of employees use AI and typically don't tell their bosses. And why not? We actually want our employees to use AI. So if anybody's listening from Vivaldi, I really do hope you are using AI every day. We think that down the road, it's going to be impossible to do your job without AI, because your time should be better spent challenging what AI brings you, which is typically going to be a first draft, really improving it, and then ultimately also engaging in conversations with AI, which is what you alluded to when you started talking about conversational and ultimately agentic AI, which is the highest level of it, and really being able to develop things over time. So it is really interesting because we already know that humans collaborate and create better value through collaboration. I think down the road, the future is really between humans and AI to also collaborate, engage in these kinds of conversations. And guess what? For individual AI agents also to collaborate and create cross-agent collaboration, or an interaction field, as we would call it, that would allow them to also challenge each other and ultimately create most value.
Absolutely. I think that's spot on because everyone here and there dabbles with a side hobby or as a side hustle, so to speak. And so perhaps they're weekend warriors trying out AI, but it's not really part of the production processes at your workplace. So that's really spot on there. And I think that some of the hesitation could be because people feel threatened by AI as replacing coding or editing and summarization. So that kind of brings me to my next question. What are some of the issues with AI, either ethical or practical, in terms of implementation? Sort of addressing this psychology of adoption and change and the potential fear of adoption, and sort of making that a smooth landing so that it can be a win-win story.
It's really interesting because ultimately you're hitting the head of the nail in terms of the issue that people do not know how to collaborate with AI. There is significant hesitancy to work together with AI, whereas we actually know that the best results are produced when humans and AI collaborate, not by humans on their own. And I'm afraid to say also not AI by their own, but collaboration is actually where we see most potential and also most issues today. Not only do people not know where to integrate AI in their work process, which I think is a bit more of a structure, kind of formal assignment that employees are perhaps able to necessarily implement on their own. But also there is, again, the idea that AI can just replace what they're doing today versus kind of helping them innovate and find new ways to do things. So if you think of AI as the new car, and we're really still in the world of horses, which is kind of where we are, then how can we actually use a car to really help us reinvent how we go from point A to point B when we've been so used to the world of horses? I think that's really hard to envision for people. And this is where sometimes the limits of AI usage are the limits of our imagination. I do think that we need to get away from inbuilt limiting beliefs of how work is done and how we approach processes within the firm, how we solve problems currently, and develop entirely new way of doing things that we can actually do through AI. So one example, for instance, is the ability to increase our probabilistic thinking and look at a higher number of scenarios. Typically, people will look at 3 to 5, maybe 5 to 7 scenarios. Through AI, you can look at 3,000 scenarios. And so you can much better assess what is more probable, understand where the leading signs are. So I think that people will be able to think laterally a lot better with the help of AI, because they will be able to imagine much more divergent scenarios that will enable them to see very, very different things from what they're seeing today. And I think that's one of the opportunities. So some of the issues around AI are really figuring out, how do we collaborate? How do we actually ensure we find completely new, novel ways to ask AI to do new things versus repeating what we already can do? And how can we perhaps find completely new ways to integrate AI into some of our routines that are not just individual, but also social? Because I think this is one of the opportunities that is untapped.
Absolutely. I love what you said, that there's no limit. It's just our imagination, and having that 3,000 scenario opportunity really gives you a picture of the scale that AI can be leveraged in terms of deployment. However, there's nothing like adoption to sort of success to drive adoption. And I remember this one anecdote where there was a woman who invented the windshield wipers on cars. And initially there was a lot of resistance because they said this windshield wiper is going to prevent drivers from seeing properly. It gets in the way. But once it was implemented, then, every car and automotive brand and model adopted it. So there's nothing like success to drive adoption. And so on that line, I guess I was wondering, what are some of the early specific examples of successful use of AI that's further up in that pyramid, as you mentioned, with strategic value creation and really creating delight and joy for people to be sort of unburdened perhaps from some of the more repetitive tasks and freeing up creativity potentially?
So I think it's really interesting. In some of the industries where I work with, such as beauty and fashion, there's an increasing use of agentic AI to create not just shopping assistants. For instance, Zegna has one. YSL has the YSL Perso, which actually allows you to kind of mix your own shades. So the hyper-personalized shopping experiences are becoming commonplace. Sephora already some time ago introduced virtual try-on and shade matching. But I think ultimately the future is to create an AI-enabled store of the future, merging the digital and the in-person experience. And I think there are so many opportunities to do this. So in this area, really the ability to create a digitally fueled journey where through AI, you actually collect the right data on each consumer journey and are able to serve them up hyper-personalized experiences. This is from the business perspective, but it's not just about collecting data. From a client perspective, beauty and fashion are, of course, an area where forever there is a need for sharing and advice. And increasingly, AI and agentic AI can actually play this role. So one early, just first step in this area was, of course, L'Oreal's Beauty Genius, which provides beauty advice throughout the client's lifestyle. But I think things can go so much further, not just through personalizing recommendations, but also through enabling sharing, integrating with other types of technologies. Imagine a smart mirror that does skin analysis that would also be integrated with AI and would enable you to really create a totally personalized routine and not just shopping experience. And ultimately, one of the things I really kind of see coming up in the future is the ability for AI to also man communities. That's, as I mentioned, the social opportunity is one of the opportunities that I don't see being leveraged enough right now, because AI has the ability through matching algorithms to optimize the creation of tribes and communities where you can put consumers or clients together in like-minded. In the age of AI, again, my anticipation is because so much is one-on-one on technology, the need for connection and community will remain as strong as ever. And brands who are able to answer that are likely to be winners. So I see a huge opportunity in inspiration, not just enabling the social experience. One example for that is helping consumers create mood boards where through AI, where actually as they go along, they collect ideas. They have no time to act to them, but they always have their inspiration board and they're able then through AI to get nudges and reminders and get their shopping journey accelerated just when they have the right moment, because we do know it's not just about wanting to purchase something. if you don't target them at the right point of time, you're missing an opportunity to close that deal.
I love that idea of having a mood board and pretending that you're Christian Lacroix or some designer from one of the luxury maisons in Paris to think of ways to inspire and collaborate and build that tribe or community. Because when you go to watch Yes to the Dress to pick your wedding gown, you always bring a group of friends or your mom or your sister or someone else. So that approval and sort of immediate feedback is something that I haven't seen because people can try anything, a different color, a different shade without dyeing your hair color. And maybe there's even opportunity for hashing or mixing up and sort of co-creating ideas together. So I think that's a great example of how AI could be used for hyper personalization. And I know personalization has been a mantra I've been talking about for 15, 20 years. The more you understand a person's passion points, the more the brand is engaged with the consumer and builds loyalty. And I just saw today that Amazon launched their Amazon Interests feature, which allows people to now search on the e-commerce platform based on their interests. And I haven't yet tested it out contextually, but if I happen to love horses and horse imagery, then maybe I'll get a purse that has a clasp with a horse or something related to an equestrian lifestyle. So I think that there are some companies that are pushing the envelope of understanding those customer passion points. But I wonder in the future, because you talk about collaboration and interaction, do you foresee avatars talking to avatars and not having real interactions?
This is a really great question. I do think that avatars can play a role. Some of my younger colleagues suggested that there are already websites that exist in the dating world where you can actually send an avatar to the first date. This is kind of like the first wedding interview, and that you actually then go on to a real date only if the avatar recommends that you pursue this and sees that there is potential. I've also heard about somebody sending an avatar to an interview, I guess because they thought that they would be more better at the interview than the original person. I'm not sure what
Delegate out your interactions, and unless you've been vetted by the employer or the potential spouse, future spouse, then it's not worth your time.
That's right. I'm not sure how I would react as an HR manager or a potential hiring person, because I might just, instead of nixing, I might just give that person the bonus of innovation and actually want to see them. But I think you're raising three really critical points. One is the emergence of these kind of immersive worlds that consumers are increasingly going to create. And then the ideas of connection and co-creation. So I just want to dwell on this because I think you said a few really important things. I think ultimately when we talk about creating these communities and tribes, it's really also giving consumers and clients the ability to create their own immersive worlds. I think Amazon obviously is already making a step in this right direction. The mood boards are another. I mean, all of the fashion brands are experimenting with that, from LVMH and their collaboration with artists to, the car brands that are creating immersive experiences. So that the opportunity for clients and for consumers for AI would be not just to adapt the products and brands they select to their need state, but also to their projected kind of life or desires. Imagine the ability to be able to place yourself, as you said, in all these different worlds and depending.
I have a teenage friend, and she likes to immerse herself in sci-fi gaming because it's this world of adventure and it's choose your own adventure, and you can have robotic romances in this fantasy second world. So I'm really interested in how a dating app could be designed because I'm actually going to be a mentor for an AI kids boot camp for underprivileged high school students this summer. The goal is to develop an app of some sort, and I was thinking either college application helper or a safe driving tool for first time beginner drivers. But that would be interesting if a dating app could be developed for teens that has the safety and also builds in your preferences. But I was at an AI users group last night in Manhattan, and they said if you're building an avatar, make sure you don't confuse the girlfriend mode with the mom. You might be saying the wrong things. So I thought that was really interesting. If because you've got to train yourself based on your text, your emails, whatever digital signals that you have in order to create your avatar and your personality. And that's visual and text. I'm not so sure so much about preferences that are more based on your web activity in the open web. But I think it's really interesting. I think you've created and envisioned a world of imagination about the opportunities for AI to develop and be implemented, not just in beauty and fashion, but practically every vertical where creativity and imagination still is the bailiwick and wheelhouse for human thinking rather than machine thinking. And one of my colleagues whom I interviewed before said, this is great. We can actually delegate things we don't want to do and now focus on the things we want to do. In spite of all of the backlash of AI creating ethical issues of machines taking over the world and minimizing and devaluing human contributions, there is a positive world where we can really amplify human experiences and make them even richer and better.
I am with you on that. I am sort of the more of a glass half full type of person. I agree with Anderson Horowitz, who really felt AI will save the world and wrote this very positive post, because I think the opportunity I already shared is in AI to enhance our cognitive abilities. So imagine us to live deeper and more in the present. I think that we actually have become so embedded in this world of technology that is one-on-one. If we try to actually use AI to create more community, to create more connection with others, which we very much need, and which I would say is increasingly missing from the real world, and then also use AI to kind of create these projective imaginary worlds. I completely agree with you. And we haven't talked about the idea of endless content. Fan fiction existed forever. But now through AI, you can actually have an endless stream of content, let's say on Harry Potter or any of the other content brands. So I'm not surprised that your teen friends is into adventure worlds or space sci-fi. For teens, this is a big phenomenon, but also increasingly adults will obviously congregate in these content and brand and community tribes that will enable them to build their lives the way they want to. And they will also move freely between these communities. They won't just belong to one, which is why, by the way, we talk, of course, about the death of traditional segmentation, because it's not about allocating a person to a segment. If we talk about, the hyper-targeted one-on-one AI-enabled marketing, of course, it's about the ability to really understand how they move from one need state to another and actually freely switch some of these tribes or communities over time to fit their needs. And that, I think, really becomes the opportunity for AI to help us think better, to imagine different futures, to take more risks, ultimately, because we can assess risks better, and also to be more daring and ultimately one day perhaps more creative. I very much hope it.
Excellent. So one last closing question, the Proust questionnaire. 10 years from now, what do you envision or see AI doing on a day-to-day basis? Are we going to have robots like in the Jetsons coming and delivering something at your beck and call? Or what's a parting snapshot of what you envision?
So I haven't spoken about my work in education, but Arizona State, ASU, one of the most innovative universities, already has AI-driven drones that actually deliver food to you. So yes, that would be certainly really nice. I would love to have robots. My prediction is that in the future, first of all, we will all have an entourage of AI agents that support our different needs. We will all have a professional coach, a writing coach, a life coach, of course, a fitness and a nutrition coach, all of them AI driven, so agentic. And ultimately, they will need to somehow collaborate as a team. So this is the beautiful thing about technology that I've actually been talking about ever since, adaptive, which is also AI driven, has taken hold in education, is that technology democratizes and gives access to many to what was previously only available to the few. So imagine a whole entourage of that used to be available only to Hollywood stars, perhaps, that now is available at your beckoning to pretty much anyone or for a small fee. And everybody will kind of use this entourage in order to really progress and be coached over time. I think people who are going to thrive in this are people who have, of course, radical growth mindset and radical openness to feedback, because with AI, that's the opportunity to really use it for growth. We were discussing today with a client the idea of one of my MIT professors who bought an AI tool called Cogni that was allowing management teams to get better aligned, leadership teams. And I think we've all experienced, we all know how difficult it is to align. So using an AI tool that was giving feedback, not just to what was being said, but to how it was being said, and was coaching them on their communication skills as a team and as individuals so that they can reach alignment better and then stay on strategy. I think that's a huge opportunity for us as humans.
I think that's really great because, yeah, they can take your Myers-Briggs test results and customize the communication according to what you perceive as the most effective way to drive alignment. So I think that's wonderful.
I would say that's number one. And then number two, I think it will become a lot easier to create new things with the help of AI. I mean, we're all kind of looking forward to that, you know. It will be easier and it will be lower risk to realize your passions, be it writing a novel and then improving it with AI, or dictating it and having AI improve it, or on the contrary, or starting with something and kind of editing it, also creating websites, creating marketing campaigns, creating and running communities, ultimately creating prototypes of your product much faster. So innovation is about to really increase its pace dramatically. And I think that's actually going to be a beautiful thing, because the cost of trying something new is going to be dramatically reduced, which is why it will become much easier to try out new things. And this will remove a lot of limitations and barriers. So the opening up of this new creative field and the ability, you mentioned weekend warriors, the ability for people much easier to realize their creative passions and then ultimately monetize it. Because remember the argument on the ability to create communities through AI, much better for product launch and idea dissemination. And so as a result, this will really, of course, change the nature of work, because there's a lot of the work in companies does become AI enabled and they will need fewer workforce. But again, I personally see a lot of enduring needs from consumers and businesses that creative individuals will have an enduring opportunity to satisfy by creating more ventures. So I think the gig economy will, of course, mushroom and become much bigger as more and more people become creators, either content creators or, of course, entrepreneurs, really realizing their passion and creating something new.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I can't wait for this new creative world. So there you go. I wanted to thank Anne from the Vivaldi Group. So appropriate. I think my first cassette tape in college was The Four Seasons from Vivaldi, which really gives you that whole spectrum of music. And so I want to thank you for your time. Hopefully, folks will tune in and comment and follow up with the rest of our podcast series. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sunny. Great conversation. Bye-bye.